Things are about to crash and we know it. Look at the earnings report that's come out. Look at Chapek's conversation with Wall Street Journal. And Keith and I talk even more about this promotion of Avatar and how that's going to really bomb. So welcome to this episode of Hollywood Breaks and the great stuff that's happening in Hollywood that we get to talk about. Enjoy the episode. Dude, what a week to be a Philadelphia sports fan. Like,
okay, I got to clarify because I'm not a Philadelphia sports fan.
Do I need to tell you what's going on in Philadelphia?
No, I know what's going on. But I will say this: it is cool to be a part of a city that is sort of enjoying a renaissance in its sports teams. Well, two out of the four at the moment.
Yeah.
So that is pretty cool. I mean, obviously the Phillies they were doing well. They had a couple bad games. Hopefully they recover in Houston this weekend. But it's been cool to be here for, my kids are excited about it. It's cool to see everybody wearing red and, everyone's talking about the Eagles and how well they're playing. And, so that it is cool to be in a city.
Yeah. So let's catch people up just in case they don't know, but like the Eagles, the football team. Yeah. Well, let's start with the Phillies, the baseball team. So right. We're talking to Hollywood here, so I'm going to just make sure everyone's clear on what.
You're not talking about the Lakers or the Dodgers, so they might just check out.
Right. The Phillies, which is the baseball team, is in the World Series.
Correct.
They are behind one game right now to the Houston Astros. Yeah. Yes. And the game last night was a close game, but they couldn't really pull it off.
No. They had a couple.
So that was.
Yeah, they had a couple really good games. The first couple, They had one huge game. Game 3 was huge, and then 4 and 5, unfortunately, they fell a little short. So we have 2 more. So that was the last game in Philly last night, and now they're traveling to Houston for the final 2 Saturday and Sunday.
So that was last night. They were playing. The baseball team was playing the Houston Astros, but also last night, Thursday night football. Mm-hmm. The Philadelphia Eagles were playing the Houston Texans,
correct,
in Texas, and they beat the Texans, and now the Eagles are 8-0, first time ever in franchise history being undefeated this late into the season. Which 8 games into a season being undefeated is a huge accomplishment.
Yes,
it's rare to be undefeated. I think there are truly undefeated teams in the regular season. The Denver Broncos and the Miami Dolphins are only 2 previously, but they're on their way. I only know that because I'm
impressed by your NFL prowess there.
But it's just fun.
It is fun.
I mean, Renaissance here. This is pretty cool.
The Steelers went 11-0 2 seasons ago, and then they lost 5 in a row. So let's not get too. I mean, but
sure, the Steelers again. What do we care? Come on,
dude. Come on. So again, I will reiterate, it is great to be a part of a city that is enjoying a sports renaissance, but I cannot claim to be a fan of either. I don't want to be considered a fair weather fan, but I am rooting for both. I am rooting for the Eagles unless they play the Steelers, which they did last week and they kicked their ass. So obviously that is coming on.
And when you get down to the World Series or the Super Bowl, there are only 2 teams. So you choose one of the 2 teams. I don't think that's fair to say you're a fair weather fan. You have to choose one of 2. So
I've been accused of such by some diehard Philly fans. So I'm just I'm correcting the record. I mean, as you said, diehard people in Hollywood can care less because I'm not talking about Dodgers or Lakers. So they could give 2 shits.
So let's talk about something that people in Hollywood might want to talk about.
I think there's an idea.
Yeah, what do you think? Come on.
I don't know what we could talk about.
I am drinking some Vision Craft brew.
Yes, because because I brew coffee and beer. Really? I don't. It's a play on words, people. It's a pun.
Brewing in his mind.
Brewing in my head, and I want to offer what's going on in my head to you, the consumer.
He thinks, and because he's thinking, he's brewing. See the vision. Brewing. Yeah.
And I craft it.
There's a lot happening. I'll say, I think the economy is finally just catching up. There's some very clear signs that, as we've been talking about, and now the earnings reports are really telling us it's for real. We're going to start doing some layoffs.
Yeah. So our good friend Sean McNulty, who was on last week, who does his Wake Up newsletter, has a fantastic piece this week. It's sort of this morning, actually, that really dives in because we have a lot of earnings reports. We had Warner Brothers, Discovery, I think, yesterday, as well as Lionsgate. And then a couple days prior to that, we had Comcast. We talked a little bit about Comcast last week, and I think we have Disney next week. So Disney will be interesting to see where Disney's at as far as the overall economy goes. But yeah, it's kind of it was kind of a dreary earnings report day yesterday. Warner Brothers is losing a lot of money. They're still spending a lot, but they're losing a lot. And there was a report out today, they're going to institute some more layoffs and particularly in the marketing and distribution of Warner Brothers Pictures, and then also potentially into home entertainment. And then Lionsgate, clearly they're just, they lost a lot of money on the Stars side of things, and they're really just kind of the film business did okay. It had about $65 million profit on, I can't remember how much revenue off the top of my head. So they're doing okay, but they're obviously prepping for either investment or a sale. That seems to be the direction they're headed. And then you have announcements.
Who would they sell to? What's
well, good question. I mean, I think, there's Netflix is obviously the value there is with most places like this, it's the library. That's where the value is. So Netflix is any of the streaming services are options. Obviously Apple and Netflix. Potentially, I don't know if the other streaming services would be interested, just because they already have studio arms, but the library is the value. So it's just a matter of whether or not anyone feels the value is really worth it.
Yeah.
And then you also have a lot of the other company announcements came out today. Amazon and Apple are both freezing hiring for the next few months, whatever that means, potentially further into 2023. I think they're taking a pause to kind of see what happens. I think everyone knows we're most likely, more than not, headed rather than not, headed for a recession in 2023, and things are going to get bumpy. So I think they're just preparing for that, and I think it's it's a little bit of a bummer of a week in terms of earnings. So we'll have to see how the rest of the year shakes out.
I don't think they're preparing for the recession. I think they're creating the recession. When you start doing hiring freezing and layoffs,
true,
that's what the recession is like.
Yeah,
they're shrinking.
Well, I mean, yeah. To be fair, I mean, Sean made a really good point. Warner Brothers, Time Warner has just always been bloated. I mean, we always used to laugh at Fox when I was at Fox that they had like 5 people doing the same job that one person at Fox was doing. So it was always sort of a little bit of a bloat. So there's definitely a need for some trimming. Absolutely. And I think Zaslav is being very smart and deliberate about where he's cutting and saying, listen, this isn't working. Like, remember how the noise we all made when HBO Max started, we're not making movies anymore, specific for the service. Is anyone doubting that was a good decision at this point? It was a good decision because you can't just throw money after it. And so he's looking at things and sort of cutting where the cut probably should have been made years ago and just saying, okay, this isn't working anymore. We're not doing this anymore, which has never really been a Time Warner thing. They've always had more people doing things, and there was a lot of inefficiencies. So they're correcting for that. But it'll be interesting to see, and Sean pointed this out as well, is this going to affect the quality that they've been known for over the course of the last few years? So you have to make sure the cuts are smart and you cut the right people. And, if you're going to combine like 2 jobs into one person, is that going to affect the overall quality, particularly when it comes to marketing? Because the marketing is always the first to get cut because it's the easy one to slice and dice. But marketing is what drives people to come and see your product. So you kind of really need to make sure that still stays at the top end of quality.
I was talking to our online chatting with one of our listeners this week, and we were talking about how well Paramount has done, honestly. And I think his original message to me was relating to the play out of Smile versus Nope, and just knowing that Paramount is really on top of something. And we both acknowledge not given enough credibility, but even in this in these environment where there are either layoffs or freezing, Paramount is freezing but not laying off, where Warner Brothers has to do layoffs. It's kind of showing you a little bit of like whose strategy is winning and whose isn't. And once again, another marker that Paramount versus Warner Brothers, where they both kind of came out, launched at the same time, totally different tactics on how they're going about their streaming platforms, what they brought on their platforms, how they played out during the pandemic, and now the results of really an amazing run for Paramount. Just keep on understanding what belongs in theaters, what belongs on their OTT platform, and what the audience wants to see. Feels like the zeitgeist is recognizing and acknowledging Paramount is doing it right.
Yeah.
And this is just another one. So a freeze is not necessarily bad. It's really just wait and see
Yeah.
strategy.
Yeah.
So
I mean, I
foolish.
think that's right. I think, Paramount has made some really great choices, and, you're right. Theatrically, in terms of their campaigns, they've been crushing it. I will say that they were a little, hush hush on sort of the numbers on Paramount Plus in terms of ARPU. There you go, Sean. That was just for you. That was average revenue per user. And they really haven't talked a lot about numbers, and they on the earnings call, they just more or less said, oh, we're happy with where things are going. So yes, they've done much better than, say, a Peacock, which is, I think most people believe, has been a very faulted and almost rolling disaster for Comcast, but they've done much better job in terms of building out that service. And you're right, being very purposeful about what goes on the service and what goes into theaters. And HBO Max is doing well, but we'll see how things shake out. They, not as many people have committed to the ad tier as they thought would. And Disney's taking another tactic by not necessarily offering the ad tier as a cheaper option, but raising the price of the ad-free Disney Plus. And then the cheaper option will be what you currently play for Disney Plus for the ad tier. So we'll see how that all plays out.
It is interesting where Disney is playing this out a little bit, right? Because they were early. They went hard on the numbers and subscribers. They clearly were the first one to hit the $100 million mark after Netflix. So they were the best competitor for Netflix, and still are, I think, in the field right now.
Right.
But I still feel like they are playing, or have an understanding of playing, of this scale. Like, it's all about scale, how many bodies can get there. And they're trying to win over a platform more, not unlike, what they lost with Disney DVD. They're trying to say, this time around, we're not going to kind of miss out, and we're going to make sure we're in the top notch of what people keep on in their subscriptions. But if you ask me, the ability for them to scale, they just feel so tied to certain universes. So a whole bunch of Star Wars stuff, or a whole bunch of Marvel stuff, or a whole bunch of their original cartoons, or animated features, but they're not really generating original content like a Netflix, or even HBO or Paramount or Hulu. I guess Hulu's part of their strategy, but it's so interesting to me, of like, they know that it's about scale, but they're relying heavily on just a few brands to accomplish that.
Yeah, I think that that's definitely accurate. I think, as I wrote in my Founders Brew newsletter, Bob Chapek was at the tech conference for the Wall Street Journal this past week, and he brought up that very point. He said critical mass is what's going to win this war. You can't fight in streaming unless you're going to win critical mass. And I said, he's right, but you have to do it smartly. And I gave two examples, one being Hocus Pocus 2, which clearly was could have been a boon for a theatrical play. You can't ignore your other, revenue drivers solely at the mercy of streaming. And also, you have to figure out the what to watch problem, because critical mass also means tons of content, to the point where it's a fire hose, and consumers only have so many hours in the day. But you're absolutely right. They do have a struggle in terms of original content. Tim Heindel, who we've had on a few times, he talked a lot about the universe, and that's something, that consumers really love, playing in universes. And obviously Disney has myriads of franchises that they can play in. Obviously Hocus Pocus is now another universe that they can create. There's myriads of spin-offs you can probably go from that. But they do need to really start looking at sort of trying to find the original content that's sort of going to help them build it out, in terms of really driving subs and reducing the churn, which is ultimately what it's going to be about. And he also brought up a fact that I think it's important, that, they're trying to make Disney Plus more than just a content platform, because they have the parks, and the parks are such an important part of what Disney is and what Disney means to the consumer. They want to bring that into as well, in terms of the experience, and make it an overall experience platform, like experience with the Disney brand, versus just watching a TV show or a movie.
Yeah, that to me is interesting, is it's kind of a metaverse play, right? The idea of a decentralized data is this thought of like moving from one platform to the other, but keeping the same profile, keeping the same data set with you.
Correct. Yeah.
So they're playing it'd be a Disney metaverse, which isn't I guess it's still meta, it's just not kind of universal. But the
Right.
fact that you can go from one platform to the other to another, and then it would track you or recognize who you are in one
Mhm.
platform to the other. So you're the things of interest that you have, or recognition of what you can do from platform to platform could change. But what we know is it's kind of doesn't really match is that if Disney does it, it's all for marketing purposes, just to sell you more and more.
Yeah.
But it's interesting that it's a corporation recognizing the opportunity for that kind of data,
Mhm.
is the beginning of corporations talking about it.
Yeah.
But really, truly, going back to the idea of just the need for scale, I almost wonder if they can recognize that scale really does have a churn and burn to it. So they have
Mhm.
deep pockets. The idea of like scale requires you just bleed cash for a while, and that's what all these platforms have done: just push money out, make more, make more, make more, make more. But quality suffers. And I think
Yep.
of like Disney's been in the TV business for years. Disney TV, right? They've had their cable channel, whatever. It's just that the
And
television shows
ABC.
are,
Yeah.
yeah, I guess so. ABC,
Yeah.
but the TV shows are really honestly just kind of garbage. They're really throwaway, teeny bopper, pop culture, wannabe kind of things, but they don't
Mhm.
last. There's no lasting impression or something that elevates the brand up higher, where other kind of platforms still can create some IP, some original IP, and then get followers in perpetuity. I think maybe some of the Fox acquisition allowed them to hide that a little bit. But
Mhm.
really, I don't think Disney is going to have really going to have a struggle with keeping up with the need for scale with their current like oversight of the type of um, universe play that they have to put in place, and always kind of snap pieces together instead of just
Mhm.
allow for some actually good quality, talent TV show that's just funny, just play out by itself. It doesn't seem like they have that model on their platform.
Yeah, they don't. And you can, your point about quality is definitely spot on, because I think a lot of people have noticed, particularly with Marvel, some of the quality has slipped slightly. It's a little different when you're releasing a movie every 2 years to when you're releasing a piece of content every 3 months. And that was one of the hallmarks of Pixar, was their movies were always so good because they only released a movie like every 2 years, and they made sure it matched the Pixar brand. But again, to your point, feeding the beast can often be a sort of a harm to your overall brand if your quality starts to suffer. And it's, in some cases, it's just naturally going to suffer because you just can't, human beings aren't capable of keeping up with that much and making sure the quality still sustains itself. So and to the point about the Fox acquisitions, it's definitely has helped alleviate that somewhat, but I still think they have a lot of work to do.
Yeah, I just can't tell if I'm really going to care about Marvel forever. Like
Yeah.
if they keep on adding more and more storylines and more character,
Mhm.
do I really want to know in depth, deeper and deeper, you know, understanding of that universe? I don't know. Like it feels like it plays itself out. And I feel the same way about Star Wars, which seems so weird because of when there was the blockbuster movement, the desire to see another Star Wars movie was there, but it took years to make it. So the anticipation was part of the process.
Yeah.
And now I don't have to anticipate very much. I could just turn on, there's another storyline about a character, whatever.
Mhm.
I even it's funny, my kids and I were um on Disney platform the other day, just kind of poking around, see what's on there. And we never watched, like, Mandalorian kind of fell off for us in our household.
Yeah.
And so I was asking myself, wondering like, what really happened? Why did I stop caring? And I stopped caring the minute I knew that it wasn't Baby Yoda. Like the mystery of who the baby was
Yes.
disappeared. And now you're
Right.
like, oh, okay, yeah, it's just now honestly, it's just a puppet. And
Mm.
you can't buy into it as much. So
Yeah.
there are some things that are missing when you're trying to get the scale and the push and the connection to an audience. All those don't necessarily connect just because you make it. And I think that's what Disney is going to kind of
Yeah, and I
struggle with
think
in
I
the
think we
future.
can really talk to a more relevant example, current events example in terms of the next Avatar.
Perfect.
which just released their latest trailer this past week. And sign the poster behind me. Obviously, I worked on the first one 13 years ago. But I think, and the trailer had some beautiful moments that, I mean, and I preface this by saying I never want to bet against James Cameron. He's clearly a visionary director. He knows what the audience wants to see. So, however, the trailer itself I felt was slightly uninspiring. And I think the challenge to what you said is so much what happened in 2009 with that movie was such a transformational film going experience. And in the 13 years since that one released and this one coming out in December, technology has caught up with James Cameron. He was groundbreaking in 2009. What we've seen thus far doesn't feel like it's groundbreaking. Now, granted, I saw this 2D. I didn't see it in a theater with 3D glasses on. And when I saw Avatar for the first time with 3D glasses on, it was amazing. And that's what really drove people, was the experience of it. And I think one of the things that I struggled with the trailer was sort of this idea of return to Pandora. And I'm like, but do they assume the audience really has an attachment to Pandora? Because like you said, like with Baby Yoda, it was sort of like, well, Baby Yoda's gone, but there was a real attachment there. That was like a boon for Disney when Baby Yoda showed up. I don't think that exists with Pandora. My wife, who in all her brilliance and after having spending so many years married to me, talking about movie marketing, when we watched a spot, I think, promoting the trailer during the baseball game last night, she watched it. Obviously we were together when I was working on Avatar, and she said, I think what they're missing is they should talk about the experience of Avatar. Remember how you felt the first time you saw it in a theater? Well, guess what? We're back and we're going to take you to the next level. That, I think, is more of a sort of a way to draw the audience back in, because you're talking 13 years ago. Some of these people don't even remember Pandora. They don't even remember the name of the planet, because it wasn't a culture. It was the highest grossing movie until Marvel, the Avengers, overtook it, but it wasn't a cultural icon. Like you could say, like maybe the Marvels were, the Avengers were, or even Baby Yoda.
Yeah. So try this. I mean, just as a test, can you name any of the characters? Like I couldn't name one character.
I'm the wrong person to ask.
No, but also, so then another question for the audience might be then too, like, is it quotable? Is there any one quote that continues on? Unlike Titanic, there are clearly some quotes that you would remember.
Yes.
And characters you would know.
Yeah.
It has none of that appeal. Think about the difference between that and something like a Back to the Future. If you were saying, hey, we're returning Back to the Future, I know it's Marty McFly. I have exact quotes that are there. There's some character moments. Yeah, exactly. Some repeatable items, and it sticks with culture. Even though it was the highest grossing picture of all time, I think the push then was that it was such a fascinating experience to go to the theater. It really, but that was 13 years ago. Since then, we've had Marvel go way beyond that kind of theatrical experience. So to return back to 13 years ago, I don't even know if that's an understanding that I really care about.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't think I gotta be honest. I don't think I'm gonna see this movie in the theater. It doesn't drive me like Maverick did.
Yeah, I mean,
it has the same problem, but I just attached to the people, the characters in the story.
Well, and you said like the lines and the epic, the character names. You remember Ice, Goose, Maverick, Charlie. You remember all these names, and it's just like I remember Jake, because I listened to 15 million cuts of Jake, the opening of the trailer, just talking about Jake, but I couldn't. And in Natiri, I remember her. But for the most part, I don't remember any of the kids. And I worked on it.
I've never told my kids, I've never said to my kids, oh, guys, sit down. We have to watch
Avatar.
I've done that with Godfather. I've done that. I mean, I've done that with Titanic. I'm like, these are the films you have to watch.
Because
even like E.T., which is way dated. And my kids go like, this is so dated. But they get what the relevance was to film.
Yeah.
I've never, even in my mind, if it was on TV right now, I don't think I would turn to it and go like, well, this would be interesting. You guys have never seen this before. I'm pretty sure they would throw the popcorn at me. They'd rather watch a repeat of Arrested Development reruns than
well, I mean, again, like when we started working on Avatar, we had a lot to overcome. We had a director who had similar to what Disney's facing now. We had a director who didn't work for 10 or 11 years. No, everyone thought we meant the cartoon, The Last Airbender. And the first thing when we showed them a picture of the Na'vi, they're like, "Oh, it's like a Thundercat or Thunder Smurf," is what some people said. So we had a lot of overcome. So I mean, it took us a lot to get to the point. And you know, at the end of the day, we finally realized we have to just advertise James Cameron. So the last half of the third trailer is his resume. And we're like, remember what you felt when you watched these movies? This is the guy we're talking about. And they were like T2, Terminator, True Lies, Titanic. I mean, you're not going to bet against that guy. And I think because the industry has evolved so much since that point in time, and as you said very astutely, we've had Marvel movies since then. And somebody on YouTube, on the comments on the trailer said, yeah, it looks great, but it doesn't feel transformation. It doesn't feel next level. Like, so I know there's a risk to promising the audience that there is something that's next level. That's the next step up in sort of the theatrical experience. If it's not like, you know, water spitting on you. But I think that's what they're ultimately, they may have to lean that way, because I think that's the only thing that's going to get anyone to feel like this is a must-see moment in the theaters. Otherwise, because Return to Pandora, it's like I will say this, it feels like they're using their institutional knowledge with stuff like Star Wars and the Avengers and almost nearly a decade and a half of making Marvel movies where everything was tied together and there was nostalgia for it. And they're trying to apply that lesson to Avatar, where there just is not the same nostalgia. It just doesn't exist.
Well, they're even competing with themselves a little bit with Wakanda coming out almost the same campaign.
Right.
Like remember, Wakanda is kind of, it has the same kind of appeal in their messaging. They're not using those words exactly, but the thought of like, and that is more relevant. That's more recent, more relevant, and something you actually might want to be curious about.
Yeah.
We'll see. To me, this is I'll just say this, like, you know, my claim, the blockbuster is dead. We'll see how true this really is, because this is truly a blockbuster play. It's trying to get people to understand something because it's big and it's fancy and it has some connectivity to some, you know, big blue universe or whatever, that people are supposed to just want to run to the theaters because it had that connection, because that's what drove us 13 years ago.
Right.
But today, I think it doesn't happen. As one of the YouTube commenters said, like, I'm glad that small indie films like Avatar are finally getting the attention they deserve. Like, it really is. It's like, it doesn't, this is, that era is over.
Yes.
And
well,
maybe this will be it, but I'm claiming right now that Maverick was the end of the blockbuster. Like, that's it for me. Like, the very last film was that. If not previous to that, like West Side Story just proves blockbuster's over, because Spielberg has no magic left in him.
Yeah, I mean,
in that realm.
I don't want to. James Cameron is such just a master of his craft. I don't want to cut him short riff, but I mean, I know how involved he was in the first one and how they were working 24/7 to finish the movie. Like a week before the release date, I think, is when they finally delivered it. But you know, I think, I don't want to bet against him, but I think he's got a lot more overcomes than in 2009. I think Disney overall has a lot more overcomes from 2009. So, and Tim went to a plus sign. So I think there's a lot more that they're facing than, again, 13 years ago. And you're right. I mean, it's a different marketplace. The blockbuster is kind of on it is dead. You're right. And they have 3 more movies after this. 3 more. So if this doesn't work, yikes. So
that's and to me, like, that's the evidence that we have is of what's going to come about in Hollywood and what the change is. I'm almost rooting for this change, as we all kind of know. Like, there's a time and a need for it.
So what do you, when you say change, what are you rooting for, to fail or not work?
I want people's stories other people's stories to come out. We have Jon Favreau, genius. You did it. Thanks for the last 15 years. I appreciate it. But I'm kind of done. I'm done with that model. And there's a new opportunity for new storytellers to step up, to break through, to create different conditions, to not have to stick with the churn and burn of Netflix. Therefore, we get crappy films, but everyone got paid for a little while. I want people to get paid and make it be good. And so I do see some evidence. And again, I'll point to Paramount is probably the one that's recognizing it and putting things out there that are original. They're interesting and they're fun to watch. They're theatrical, and I'll watch them again. And they're not big, gigantic blockbuster, universal thematic games. So I think that's what I'm looking forward to.
And you meant James Cameron, right? Not you don't want to beat up on the wrong director, right? You meant James. You said Jon Favreau.
Oh no! I mean, no, Jon Favreau bringing us Marvel. Universe.
From the Mandalorian.
I'm very excited that he brought.
Okay,
well, that and the Marvel. I mean, the Marvel Universe was created by Favreau. Yeah.
Well, he directed the. Yeah, he didn't. Well, yes, that's true. Iron Man was his, and he was the one who pushed for Robert Downey Jr. So yes, you were right. He created that.
Universe. Yeah, and many other kind of
and the Mandalorian
pieces
and Baby Yoda.
Yeah,
that's all Jon Favreau.
Yeah. So the universe play, I kind of think that he helped bring that on board, and I'm glad for it. But the universe, I don't know, that era is over, and I think
we should get Tim Heindel back on here to debate you about that aspect of the universe, because I think he would probably take the other side of that coin and say, "Oh wait, no, look at all these movies that are doing well that are in the John Wick universe and blah blah blah." So yeah, I mean, I agree with you. This is kind of one of the things that I've been wishing to happen, that, we would start seeing a change. And you're right, Netflix just releases, the quality of Netflix movies is just bleh. And, most big blockbuster movies are just not great. And we just have to deal, and try to figure out what the next way forward is. And maybe if Avatar doesn't work, it'll be another one of those like moments where the industry, okay, what's our way forward? And you're right, Paramount has been very smart. And, you combine with what Paramount's doing with what Kevin Getz has often said, like, we have all a bevy of research, figure out what you need to spend to make the movie work. Not every movie is worth $100 million. You can shoot it for $30 million and then have, that additional money to help market your movie. So yeah, maybe this will be that time that, the shift continues.
The TikTok makers are going to have some influence on what we're going to see next, instead of it being the studio.
Assuming TikTok doesn't get banned in the US, Tim, because there's been rumblings about that.
Well, maybe that would create, they just scatter to the next platform.
Then we go to the next platform. Right, exactly.
Yeah. They're not going to stop. They're just going to stop. They're going to stop there.
Yeah.
All right. Well, next week we're talking about Wakanda Forever. I'm pretty sure that we're going to see some of this thing play itself out. Pretty curious.
Me too. I might actually go to the theater and see that one.
Go Phillies, huh? Or maybe go Astros.
Phillies. We're traveling today, and we got a must win tomorrow night. If we don't win tomorrow night, it's pretty much game set match. So we got to win tomorrow night, and then Sunday will be the D-Day. So we got to win tomorrow, and then we'll go from there. So go Phillies on Saturday.
And I don't want to be hating, because I'm actually not loyal to either group, but if Dusty Baker wins, it wouldn't hurt my feelings. That guy's a pretty class act.
I mean, that's the thing. Everyone loves Dusty, and he's never won a World Series, I think, as a manager. So everyone's kind of rooting for him too. So I'm kind of rooting for him.
It's kind of cool.
It's a win-win either way. Cool. But I probably get a lot of hate for saying that from my Philly friends.
Thank goodness none of them are watching, Keith.
Yeah,
none of them are watching. We're on the coast.
Well, hopefully, I don't know. I've got a few fans, I think, around the main line, but we'll see. If I get something thrown at me when I'm go to pick my kids up from school, then we'll know who's watching.
Know which one it is. All right, my friend. Have a good weekend.
Yeah, you too. See you next week.
Thanks.